Good to be with you.
Thanks for having me. Right after lunch, everyone's a little bit tired, so if you are in food coma, please just dream about your next dining experience. That'll help a lot. So.
We're going to talk about food during a food coma. Perfect. So OpenTable has been somewhat of a pioneer, and I mean, they're the first company to really do online reservations, and you've come a long way with your app. You've been with them for 7.5 years now, and I wonder, for everybody's benefit, could you just sort of catch us up on what the functionality of the app is and what type of an experience you're going for at the app?
Sure. Our first app, I think, was back in 2001. We launched on the Palm Pre. I think we had one reservation, which was probably our test group. But it's been an earnest growth effort for us, obviously, because I think mobile is a really amazing opportunity for OpenTable and for OpenTable users. Currently, more than 50% of our reservations come through our mobile properties. So we really are striving with the mobile side to help power great dining experiences. And that includes both before the dining out experience, during the meal, and then afterwards, reflecting and sharing.
Okay, so let's walk through those real quick. So before the dining experience, what's some of the functionality that applies there?
Sure. So obviously, location awareness is a huge piece. To be able to look at where you can dine and discover restaurants around you, whether you're at home or you're traveling. Being able to give you a really relevant set of restaurants, not all the restaurants, but a very relevant set of restaurants for you is really important. And also to be able to deliver content that'll help you make a decision really quickly. So things like dish level photos through our Foodspotting product, right. Things like tags and other ways in which we can help you quickly assess if that's the right restaurant for you.
Yeah.
That's before.
Okay, and the Foodspotting acquisition took place when?
I believe it was about 3 years ago.
About 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was in response to what you perceived as a customer expectation for the type of information that would be delivered through the app.
Well, I think people just were starting to take a lot of pictures of food, right? And so dish level content really didn't exist in an aggregated place before Foodspotting started. And I think it really is a unique way, if you haven't tried it, to decide where you want to dine. So it's an important part of the discovery process. And so within the mobile world, it's a really great opportunity. And then obviously after you dine, to be able to share those photos and to be able to post those, it benefits other people.
Yeah. So while you're still deciding on where to go, you could look at some of these plate level pictures and figure out what's good tonight or what have you, right?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the more we can prepare you to understand what you're going to have, what type of experience you're going to have when you get to the restaurant, really leads into the opportunity to use mobile to improve the experience at the restaurant. And so restaurateurs exist, and many of them, it's all about these magical moments and interchange they have with diners during the actual dining experience. And so for mobile technology, it's not necessarily about trying to get them to pull out the phone when they get to the restaurant, but rather how do you use that technology to enable a better experience at the restaurant.
Okay, so here we've talked about before they get there. Now we're at the restaurant, and in some sense the show begins. This is where the hospitality all happens, and so what's the app's role in all this?
Well, it's evolving greatly. One of the most interesting things that we've launched recently is the ability to pay with your mobile device, whether that's iOS or Android. And it's much like the experience of an Uber, where you can just, on your phone, view the bill, swipe to pay, add a tip, and get up and walk out, in large part due to the fact that we have technology into the restaurant and integrated with the POS systems that they have. Creates a really great experience for folks when you have, when you need to get out of the restaurant quickly, when you have kids with you, like I might, and they're underneath the table and you're starting to panic. It's really a pretty amazing experience if you haven't tried it yet, to try paying, again, much like you're using with some of the car companies.
So just a little bit more, if I'm sitting there and I'm finishing my meal, I mean, it's kind of up to me when I want to end the dining experience and then settle up.
Yeah, and so since it's integrated with the OpenTable system that's in the restaurant, plus the point of sale system, it doesn't force the restaurant to change their operations, which we found really to be important. In a lot of ways, we want our technology to be invisible during the dining experience. We don't want to ask restaurants to need to change their operations significantly because that's hard. Yeah. Right, and so this is something that is designed specifically to take advantage of the tools and technology they're already using, and then on the diner side, it creates a really new experience that's exciting. The feedback we've gotten for folks that have used it, and I encourage you all, if you are OpenTable users out there, to give it a try. The first time you're wondering, is someone going to chase you out of the restaurant? But as you get used to it, and as they don't chase you out of the restaurant because the technology is telling them that you paid with OpenTable, it really becomes something that I think redefines and removes this kind of funny, frictionful experience of paying at restaurants. I mean, this, it's kind of an awkward dance the way that we do it traditionally. And I think you give them your credit card, and then they come back with the bill, and then you give them back to them, and then you're going back and forth. It's just something that I think is really ripe for disruption. And we're hearing from diners and restaurants that it creates a really great experience.
I think that's probably my favorite part about what you're doing. I mean, that's probably the central example. I mean, for many of us, when we first tried Uber, the thing that we remembered, that was wonderful about it, is not having to deal with the payments that we're used to with a taxi driver, and this whole sort of, tension-filled face-to-face thing where you're deciding how much tip to give, and so you're taking this into a restaurant setting and doing the same thing, and that seems like it would be a great relief.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think the role of mobile and technology in the restaurant. So, we were started as a place you could go, a website you could go to book restaurant reservations. And as we aspired to be valuable throughout the dining process, I think focusing on those moments that either are awkward or difficult between the restaurant and the diner, or help them deliver those really special aha moments even better. Yeah. Is really important, and you can envision some of them that we're working on right now that are great. So today you can already tell the restaurant through your special requests when you book the reservation that you're gluten-free, or that you have an allergy, or that you prefer a window over somewhere else in the dining room. And when you enable the restaurateur to know that information in advance, it gives them an advantage to be able to deliver a moment of hospitality that otherwise they'd have to ask for. And we've heard stories about people getting handed a gluten-free menu instead of having to announce in front of the entire table that they're gluten-free, right? Yeah. And so again, it's not them pulling out their app in the middle of the meal, because that can be disruptive to the connection between the restaurant and the diner, but it's something that is enabled by that mobile technology.
Yeah. I didn't ask you about this before, but the scenario where a group of people are splitting up a bill, is that something that might be built into the pay system in your app, or is it?
It is something. Today, we're working on that right now. It's something that I think in a lot of situations is very valuable to be able to split the check, and to do it in a very elegant way. It's a complicated problem to solve, but it's something that I think will be really beneficial. There's also I like the scenario of a business dining experience where you don't have to do the tug of war across the table because someone will already have paid for the meal, and you don't have to worry about that. But
right. Yeah, so that might be another example of an uncomfortable situation.
Yep.
So that's during the dining experience, and just to go a little bit further into that, I mean, the experience is something that you have to work with the restaurateur on. I mean, there are certain places in this relationship between the entrepreneur or the restaurateur and the diner that they don't want the app to spring up and interrupt that, right? Yeah. So you have to kind of work carefully with them.
It depends on the type of restaurant. So I think many of you have seen a lot of commercials that are running now in heavily casual restaurants where technology is appearing at the table. In more fine dining restaurants, I think that's more awkward and doesn't seem to be getting a lot of traction, nor do I expect it to be. Like the idea of a waiter looking at an iPhone or a technology device while he's taking your order or she's taking your order, I think gets in between the diner and the restaurant. And so again, I think this invisible technology, how we can make the waiter or the waitstaff more successful within that experience without needing them to necessarily have that technology present at the time to disrupt the point of those moments. It's really critical.
Yeah. So on the subject of what people expect in mobile, do you feel like when you're offering new features like OpenTable Pay, do you feel like you're just responding to things that people have sort of come to expect already? Like, does it feel like, people have already used Uber a lot, so they expect a similar experience in the restaurant? Or do you feel like you're pushing out new things that are sort of just surprising and delighting people?
Yeah. I don't know that it's necessarily based on precedent in other industries. I think it's the median, and there's so many new things that are enabled by mobile technology, right? One great example, I think, that you could say, well, what if instead of having to check in at the host stand when you get in and say, I'm Mr. Jampol here for a party of 2 at 8, if they could my device could seamlessly tell them that I had just walked in the door because it knows that I'm there, and then for them to say, welcome back, Mr. Jampol, or for them to know the whole party's here, or if I'm running late, for my device to tell the restaurant seamlessly that I'm running late, and they can then maybe manage the table differently. So in order to answer your question, I think it's really just people getting more comfortable with their phones, more comfortable with the permissions that they're being asked to give to enable some of these experiences, and really more comfortable maybe setting up expectation that they're going to be delighted by using a mobile forward product.
Yeah. So you've started to get into this a little bit. When we talked earlier, you were telling me about some of the directions that the app might go in, and sort of this expectation that a mobile device is context aware. It knows where it is, knows the location of the user. Talk to us a little bit about what some of those directions are.
Yeah. So I've named a few. I mean, obviously with Pay being here, that's a great first step, because I think that one shows the power of mobile very well. I like the idea, again, of where people can be delighted by it or they can avoid something that's awkward. And so when you're showing up at the restaurant, coordinating your party and knowing where your party is. So how many times have your friends said, I'm right there, I'm just parking, and then you're waiting there 30 minutes at the host stand while they actually weren't waiting there. But if you knew where they were on a map, you can imagine you could say, hey, let's go to the bar and have a drink, and tell the restaurant that we're going to need to push our reservation back, so that you reduce the angst of the restaurant about the table, and you can actually have a drink instead of wait for your friend at the host stand. So you can start to coordinate folks better because mobile technology enables you to know where the people in the party are. So, I think that's a really good example. And there's others along the way between the dining experience and then after the dining experience, where it's really all about providing feedback to the restaurant via your mobile device, sharing the experiences that you had with the other folks at the table, and hopefully memorializing it in a way that as you're thinking about dining out next, that you can take advantage of that content that came from your dining experience.
Yeah. And this idea of knowing where the people in the party, where they are, or if they're going to be late or what have you, that kind of can work in the favor of the restaurateur as well, right, for planning and things like that.
Yeah, if you're late for a 7 p.m. reservation and they can give your table to someone else and put you in a 7:15 or 7:30 slot, it helps with the optimization of their inventory. And so it is really critical. And for restaurants, the difference between a full restaurant and empty seats is a really big deal for their profitability. And so the better that we can match supply and demand for them, and I think mobile can really help with that. We're already using a lot of the analytics that come out of mobile to help better set up and optimize the restaurant's reservation books with them, so that they can really take advantage of that. And it's a great partnership, because that's great for restaurants, it's great for diners, and obviously it's good for OpenTable as well.
Yeah. So can you drill just a little bit deeper into that, like what some of those analytics might be? Are those arrival times and leaving times and just...
Yeah, so our new product on the restaurant side is called Guest Center, which is a cloud-based system, hospitality management system. And so since that's in the cloud, it really enables us to get a lot more data about how the restaurants are operating, obviously with their permission, so we can start to understand the turn times of tables. We can start to understand the differences between when the reservations were booked for and when they were seated, and to start to build more intelligent systems that can help respond in an automated fashion to help them make good decisions. If you call up and say, can you get me in tonight? Or if you walk into the restaurant, to give you accurate times until the table's going to be ready for you. So a lot of great data coming out of that. That's powered by the systems that we put in the restaurant, on the restaurant side, as well as mobile and desktop data. So.
Okay. So I wanted to get into the issue of app promotion and some of the analytics around that. But to sort of frame this, I mean, we talk about it. I mean, the goal isn't conversions. The goal is a high value app user for OpenTable. And to sort of frame this, can you tell us what the definition of that is for you?
Well, I mean, I think we know that app users are more valuable than folks that don't use our app. Clearly, there's some great use cases that having an app on someone's phone are enabled. And so we tend to see that they use OpenTable more frequently and that they engage with the other parts of our product, like our reviews product, where someone can fill out a review after they're marked as seated at the restaurant, and other things. So by having the app, they become instantly more valuable, and they're more likely to use us more frequently. So that's super important. And so I think how we acquire new app users has been very much a priority for my team as well as for OpenTable, and starting to get scientific about testing and learning across a number of different channels, with the idea of failing fast, and then when we see scale or we see quality, to be able to drive as much of an approach through that.
Yeah, this idea of failing quickly, have you struggled with understanding quickly whether things are working or whether they're not working? I mean, in other words, this connection between, a touch and then an eventual conversion. I mean, have you had trouble connecting those two, or is that an issue for you?
Hard question to answer. So we've come a long way in the last year in terms of understanding what happens when someone clicks to download, when someone downloads, and then subsequently, if they're able to start using the app, making reservations and such. And so also we've been able to use the data, depending on the platform, to help do a lot of retargeting, so that folks that get somewhat through that process to transaction, we can help encourage them along the way and remind them why they might have installed the app in the first place. It's really a big deal to ask someone to put your app on their deck now. Yeah. With the number of apps that are out there and the data showing that people are using less and less apps regularly. So I think one of the critical questions is, what's the behavior that people show organically when they're ready to download your app? And how do you really start to understand that? So we've studied that, and for example, we know that when someone has used us 3 or more times, that's when they tend to be really interested in downloading the app. And so that really had us change a little bit about how we approach app installs. So once they've booked 3 or more reservations, maybe on the web or mobile web, that's when we start to really hit them more with download our app messaging. We used to just clobber people the first time we saw them with the app, because we're thinking that'll make them more valuable. But you haven't delivered enough value to say you're worth being on their phone until they get into a cycle of wanting to use you. And so I think it's really important. I don't know that a lot of companies study that and understand that, but it's been something that's been eye-opening for us.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So just to reinforce what you just said, there was a time that you just kind of went full bore trying to get a conversion, and now you're taking a pretty close look at what that prospect looks like, and whether they would be a good app user. Right?
Yeah. So for example, we might not intercept somebody on our mobile website if they're coming from search on a non-brand term the first time. We just want them to experience what it's like to use the product and then mobile web product, and then maybe we'll target them later with an app install message. Versus someone if they come and they search maybe on OpenTable through Google or Yahoo, and maybe then we'll intercept them with something because there's brand familiarity there. They understand that. That's maybe much more likely for them to be able to. But I would say one thing, I know we're short on time. One thing I would say is don't forget about your existing users. It's a lot easier to leverage your existing user base to try to get them to use your app than it is to go out and buy a bunch of new users. Most of our app acquisition is amongst our existing users or comes organically through either word of mouth or directly through the app stores.
Cool. Great talking to you.
Thanks for the time.
Okay.